Hi, I'm Kristen, and this is the Simple Handmade Everyday Podcast, where I talk about living a creative, intentional life. I like to chat about quilting, sometimes knitting, and even crochet, what I'm reading and watching, and a little bit about keeping a cozy, organized home. I've got my cup of tea in hand, and I hope you do too, so let's settle in for a chat. This is episode 43. Welcome! I am coming at you from an absolutely gorgeous day here in Southern California. We are in late February. It actually rained a tiny bit this morning, which we could have used a lot more of, but it is now beautiful and sunny again. This is it was President's Day week. I didn't get the day off, but my kids were home from college. They came home in Thursday and Friday the week before, actually Thursday and Saturday, because Jonah, they took separate trains, and Jonah actually was on his way to the train in San Diego when he got a text that it had been canceled. Just like that, just canceled. And so he didn't come till the next day, which we were a little bit bummed about. But it was a nice weekend. It was Valentine's Day. Chloe made a delicious mocha cake. And we didn't do anything special, just kind of hung out, which is really what I like to do. Hanging out is my love language. We played some games, Yahtzee, Boggle. Boggle's kind of hard, actually. I think I can see how if you played it a lot, you could get good at it. As a matter of fact, we're watching King of the Hill right now is the show that we watch with my high schooler, and Peggy Hill, the mother in that little animated sitcom, she is like a total Boggle champion. She actually sits there and practices at home, which I can see why, because we were all a little bit amazed at the combinations that we missed. We all missed sort of different things. It was funny. So anyway, that was great. Everybody got back to school and just kind of back to life as usual. I'm definitely starting to get that spring itch to, start cleaning up the yard, which my husband would love to hear me say that. And I get into this thing in the spring and summer where I just want to go to Home Depot every Sunday. I'll be sitting out there, in the backyard, and I'll think, that would look really nice if we had a few more potted plants. Okay, I'm going to Home Depot, and a hanging plant here would be nice. Okay, I'm going to Home Depot. So that itch is kind of coming back. I actually just bought what's called like a baby rubber plant for my the master bathroom when I was at Trader Joe's today. So I'm definitely getting that itch to get more green things going. Oh, let's talk about the tea. I think I mentioned last time that I got a bunch of Harney & Sons teas in the sachets. So it's a very nice, it's like loose leaf tea, but they put it into a tea bag. And I'm drinking one of what turns out to be one of their best sellers that I didn't even know about. It's called Hot Cinnamon Spice Tea. And oh my gosh, if you are a child, let's just say, who graduated from high school in the mid-'80s, do you remember Red Hots? Not Red Hots. Red Hots would be good too, actually, but I was actually thinking of hot tamales, those candy hot tamales. This tea tastes like you're drinking hot tamales, and I love it. I love it. It actually says, what does it say here? It's black tea with orange and sweet clove. Obviously, it has cinnamon too. That's a weird thing to leave out of the description. Maybe they thought they didn't have to say it. So for a while I was wondering if it was herbal, but no, it's black tea that's just flavored with some orange and spices, and oh my gosh, it's delicious. So I'm really enjoying that. When the kids were home from college, I meant to send it back with Chloe, but I gave her some of the Valentine's Day blend that I talked about last time, which has like a chocolatey flavor, and with a little bit of some kind of a sweetener and milk. That is a super good tea. So I want to make sure when she comes home for spring break, which is actually not just spring break for her, it will be the end of college for her. She's graduating in about a month, a quarter early from college, and we're super excited. She has a job lined up, so the stars are in alignment. It's maybe not the job that she will want forever, but what first job is. And so anyways, I'll make sure that I send the rest of that Valentine's tea with her, because I think she really appreciated it. Well, before we get going on the quilting segment, I'd like to thank the Fat Quarter Shop for sponsoring the podcast. The Fat Quarter Shop is a one-stop show for quilting fabrics and supplies for quilters around the world. They stock quilt shop quality fabrics, pre-cuts, quilt kits, patterns, notions, and even cross-stitch supplies. This month, Mode Bella Solids are 20% off. Bella Solids are one of the premier solid fabric collections that Fat Quarter Shop carries. In fact, they have every Bella Solid color and pre-cut. Honestly, Bella Solids are one of my favorites. 97 and 98, those SKU numbers are two of my favorites. That's kind of a very white and then a slight off-white, so I use those all the time. I'll put a link in the show notes. All right, let's talk quilting. I was thinking that I wasn't going to have a lot to talk about, but I do, because I've talked about on other episodes that I am going to be on the book tour for Patchwork Gifts by Elise Beck. My stop was supposed to actually be this month, but I traded with Minky because I was feeling stressed out this month. And to thank her for that, we went out to a very nice lunch the other day at this new restaurant. So that was fun. So anyways, I think I talked about I can never remember what I talk about from episode to episode. I hope you don't mind a few repeats, but I decided that the project that I wanted to do in that book was a baby quilt, and now I'm wondering if I have talked about this. I'm just charging through, people. It it looks like a half square triangle baby quilt, but it is so brilliantly constructed that the way she's done it, you couldn't chop off points if you wanted to. And it's because every triangle is they're separated a little bit. You will see it. I will maybe not till next month, unless you buy the book. You should buy the book. Maybe I'll take a picture of the book. I don't know. But as I was going through my stash, I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do. I thought about doing like a blue and white, and I'm like, Kristen, you just did this whole blue and white quilt for the Hand Pieced Quilt Along. You need to move on. I thought about red and white. And my reds, I wanted to do kind of a scrappy red and white. My reds don't go together. Either do my blues, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is the problem with a stash, is that I just have a hard time getting my stash to work together. I decided I'm probably not going to do Frolic, so I looked at all those blues that were already curated, but it just was not speaking to me. And the actual pattern in the book shows a lot of little florals, and I do actually have Riley Blake now has Liberty, like they got the Liberty license. And so if you have ever sewn with Liberty fabric, you know that it's on a type of fabric called lawn, which is different from quilting cotton. It's much thinner. It's frankly a little bit hard to sew with, in my opinion. I was really surprised the first time I sewed with it. I'm like, oh, why does everybody love this? It's so hard. You need to starch it. There's all kinds of tricks to sewing with it. But so they now are printing Liberty designs on quilting cotton, and I have some, and I'm excited to use it. And so I thought about using that, but I'm like, then it's just going to look a lot like the one that she did in the book, and I'm not really bringing any value to this. So I started going through, just kind of looking through my stash, trying to figure out what was what. And I had a charm pack of Bonnie and Camille. I used to be such a Bonnie and Camille person, and I do love them, but I think if you've sewn with that fabric for a while, I don't know, I feel like I've been there, done that, if you know what I mean. I love it. There's no doubt about that, but I feel like I've done a number of quilts in that. And I had a charm pack of Little Ruby. So Ruby was a very popular line. Actually, I did a swoon quilt in Ruby. So they did Little Ruby, which is like miniaturized versions of those designs, which, there you go. That's why I'm having deja vu, because I actually literally have been there, done that. But I had this charm pack because I just kind of wanted to own something. And it's actually one of the very few charm packs I own. I own a bunch of little charm packs, and by a bunch, I mean 10. But it's the only charm pack I owned. And the pattern for this quilt has 42 triangles. I'm like, it's 42 triangles. So I was just able, it was like perfect. And usually I'm like, usually there's some fabrics in a charm pack, like the lights, that often don't work. And I thought I was going to come up short, but I'm like, I have other Bonnie and Camille fabric, but I just embraced it. Some of the triangles are very low contrast. So anyways, that was like, I sewed the whole center of that together in one afternoon. It was great. And then I let Elise know, did you know that quilt is perfect for a charm pack? You do just have to trim them down a little bit, but you didn't have to. I mean, I could have just left them the size she said, that a charm pack is, but I'm a rule follower, so I did that. So anyways, I've now sewn the borders on that. I had some Bonnie and Camille. I had a bunch of Bonnie and Camille fabric because the first hand piecing project that I took on was the Fat Quarter Shop charity quilt. I don't know, I'm going to say like 4 years ago. It was a Bonnie and Camille pattern. And I actually have sewn all the blocks for that. I just need to sew them together. And I bought border and backing fabric. Well, it's been sitting there for a long time, and I really debated whether or not I should break into that fabric for this quilt. But I'm just like, it's better to use it, and I'll figure something else out if I ever finish this hand-pieced quilt, Bonnie and Camille quilt. And so it's kind of got aqua borders. And then I decided, okay, I've never backed a quilt with flannel. And I put a question in the Hand Pieced Quilt Along Facebook group, not the page, but the private group, which you should join because we're having fun over there, about if people had any advice, which most people said, wash it first because it shrinks a lot. And I was personally thinking that I should not go to like Joann for it, that I needed to buy good quilt quality flannel. So I went to the Fat Quarter Shop, and I'm looking. My problem is there's a big part of me that just wants to back it in white flannel, but baby quilt people, I mean, that's a terrible idea, right? So I wanted it to be a baby quilt that could go either way, for boy or girl. And because there's reds and pinks and aqua and navy and a little green and gray. I mean, it really could go either way. So I don't want a blue back or a pink back. I was really struggling, and the borders are this aqua, and I don't know. I just could not figure out if things were going to clash online. So when Minky and I went to lunch, we went by Cotton and Chocolate, which is my local quilt shop, and I knew that they were going to have a much smaller selection of flannels, which was true. And then we were both kind of looking at like grays, which sounds like that would be just fine. But in the moment, I was like, I don't know. Ultimately, I didn't go with flannel. I just could not find the thing that was right. What I ended up doing is, it's white. I got a back that's white, and it's the pattern. It's like kind of like a little, what does it have on it? Clouds and little animals and stuff in gray. So I did kind of go with a white gray thing. It's actually a cotton and steel print, so it was no bargain. But I ended up going with that. So I do need to just base that and quilt that. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to actually quilting on my machine again. I enjoyed it when I did the pillow fight, small projects. I don't really mind quilting those. So I'm trying to figure out what the right design for this quilt should be. I do paisleys on just about everything. That's my new meander. I don't really like to meander anymore, but I think I'm going to break out some of those books. When I did a machine quilting blog hop thing a few years ago, where Holly Ann and Vicky and Quilt and Jenny and we every week practiced free motion quilting out of this book. The Ultimate Guide to Machine Quilting, I think is what it was called. And I did look at some of those motifs. I know there were some that were flowers. Oh, is that a little girlish? I don't know. So I need to figure out the motif, but I'm looking forward to that. So that it felt good because I'd been doing a lot of hand piecing, and it felt so good and fast to get to knock out some machine piecing. So that was really fun. And that's the other thing that I've been working on is the Hand Pieced Quilt Along. The quilt, which that's actually been done for a little while. I have so struggled with photographing this quilt top. It's bigger this year than it was last year. So I used some double-sided tape to tape it up on various buildings, and it doesn't always stay, and oh my gosh. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I am not happy with the pictures that I got, but I just was like, enough. I'd gone out so many different times. The time that I'm sticking with is I went at 6:30 a.m. to get what is called golden hour, but in the morning. And I'm realizing now that it looks a little washed out because of weak morning light. I tried to photograph it on my neighbor's house, and it kept getting, it took so long to get pictured, it kept getting wrinkled. It was just crazy. So So I go and to take pictures one day, completely fail, come back, and as I'm putting it back up on the design wall so that I don't have to iron it again, I realize that there are some stains on the last border. I'm thinking it's a tea stain, and I totally am drinking tea as I'm hand piecing this and watching. At that point, it was probably sanditon or something. And then I found another one. So I had stained the borders. I just wanted to cry. And so I actually ripped it all off and cut a new strip and re-pieced that sucker. I'm like, you're going to be so unhappy if you leave this and you quilt it, because I tried to get it out, and then I was so afraid as I was trying to get this stain out of the border that I was going to get some sort of watermark on the rest of the quilts. And yeah, it was a rough couple hours there as I worked that out. But be careful. And then I just drank water while I was sewing that last border. It's like never really occurred to me that I could drip tea on my quilt as I was sewing. So ridiculous. So anyway, so that quilt is it's done. I'm thinking about how I want to quilt it. I never did. Between me and you, don't tell anybody, I never have finished quilting my last year Hand Pieced Quilt Along quilt. I feel terrible about that. I just struggled with the motif. I started 3 times and ripped them all out. And, so this time I'm thinking about doing multiple spirals. Frances over at the Off Kilter Quilt did this hand quilting motif a year or so ago on a quilt that kind of accompanied her book Friendship album. It was Dorothy's pinwheel quilt, and it looked really fun. So it's a spiral and it stops, and then another one, and it kind of runs into that one. So multiple ones. It would require some marking. So that's my thought now. I still do love the idea of the Baptist fan on the last year's, and I just need to figure out a better way to mark that. So anyways, Hand Pieced Quilt Along is going to be launching soon. Patty and I have been working incessantly behind the scenes to prepare the pattern and our quilt and the blog posts and things like that. So just keep your eyes open for that. We'll be posting all over the place when it launches, but the quilt reveal is coming very, very soon. And then you can judge for yourself what kind of job I did photographing that quilt. The other things I'm looking forward to now that I'm done hand piecing that for now, the Sweet Confetti quilt, has been back from the quilter for weeks and weeks, and I just want to put the binding on that, so I'm looking forward to that. And getting back to, another big project. For instance, that solids quilt that I started a year and a half ago for my son, who's going to be going away to college by the time I finish that, and he won't even want it anymore. But that's the Rooftop Wonders pattern. So I've got a lot of exciting things coming up. As I am recording this, Quiltcon is going on, and I was never going to go to this one as much as I would have loved to. I just can't afford to travel like that every year. I always have a little bit of regret, a little remorse when I watch it. I'm like, oh, I wish it was there, because I have been to a couple, and they are so fun and inspiring in real life. So I've been following along on, Instagram. I actually, Frances told me you could download the Quiltcon app, even if you're not registered for the show, and all the quilts are in there, and that's one way you can look at them. So I've been doing that, and that's fun. It is very hard to get a feel for the show when you're not there. I just kind of think it's kind of fun to look for what's new, what's trending, what's different from past shows. And it's just so different when you're standing in front of a quilt and you can see all the details. Because I remember 2 years ago when it was in Pasadena, my friend Holly Ann and I, we walked that show together, and she did this Facebook Live, and we were just kind of talking about what we were seeing. And I remember that there was a lot of tiny piecing. There were more prints in the quilts than I had seen before, and there was more free motion, not just straight line quilting. Those were all things that I kind of noticed, and things that I'm not really seeing this time. But it could be very well that you don't see the free motion quilting when you just look at a photo of a quilt on your phone. You can't see that detail. You can't see, the types of fabrics they're using. But I will say the best in show quilt done by a man. I should be better prepared for this. I think his name is Pete or something. Technically, it is amazing. It's a star, and one quadrant is like exploding, bursting out. It looks like it is meticulously pieced. And if you look at the quilting, it's a combination of straight line and free motion quilting, and it is amazing. Technically, it is an amazing, stunning quilt. Does it touch my heart? No, it doesn't. It's a beautiful quilt, but it's not making me feel anything. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. I don't know. I'd be curious what you guys think. One thing I love about Quiltcon is it is an art show. I love Quiltcon more than a traditional quilt show because every piece just looks, they're so different. I like looking at modern art as well. I don't have to understand it, but I like that it makes me feel something. And I'm seeing a lot of like really tiny stripes. I think maybe that was a theme this year. I never participate in any of these challenges. As a matter of fact, I've let my Modern Quilt Guild membership lapse, and I am realizing that I really need to renew that. I want to support it, number one, but also they have these challenges that I've never done, but I'm realizing could really help me creatively to get out of some ruts and be a way to experiment with modern quilting. So I'm seeing a lot of super tiny stripes, which is pretty cool and a kind of a great technical feat. I always love, this sounds so weird, but I love the quilts in the minimalism category because I find minimalism in quilts such a brave choice. It's like I just can't imagine, I think it was Cheryl Brinkley had this one quilt that had like white and navy stripes top to bottom, so vertical stripes, and then the sides were just like a white or an off-white. That was the whole quilt, and then she quilted straight line quilts with a ton of yellow thread. And I just think it's so brave to use 4 yards of white fabric in the front of your quilt. I feel like I'm sort of trained to really make sure I'm getting my money's worth out of this. This fabric's expensive. I want to, just make sure that the design is popping all over the place. And it's like one of these days I want to do, something really brave like that. Although that, the quilting really matters then. Although she did just a bunch of straight line quilting, which is harder than it looks. What else? The kids' quilts. It just filled me with so much hope. The kids' quilts were amazing. There's a couple kind of political ones of like a baby in a cage, a little kid in a cage. I couldn't believe it was done by a child. I mean, I don't know how old the child was. I didn't look into that. But the kids' quilts, I absolutely adored looking at. And there seemed to be, I think the challenge or the charity quilt thing had to do with words this year. So there's lots, and I think it would have had anyways, but lots of quilts that, have words and letters, which is not something that I'm necessarily interested in doing, but I do find them very interesting to look at. So I've said before, for years now, I'm going on, what is the date here? Oh my gosh, I guess I just hit my 2-year anniversary. Wow, I didn't even realize. So for 2 years, I've been talking about how I want to practice improv. I want to make a modern quilt, and I still haven't done it. But this year, I want to do it. And maybe the way to do it is to start with the little mini quilt challenges. So stay tuned for that. Well, hand piecing has still been taking up all of my handwork time. So I haven't been doing much knitting, but I did when Chloe was here, I gave her a skein of the Dishy cotton dishcloth yarn from Knit Picks and said, hey, would you crochet me some dishcloths? My dishcloths, which are all knitted, they're starting to fall apart because we use them to death, and I just haven't felt like knitting them lately. And I do think that actually crochet might make better dishcloths, or at least equally as good dishcloths, because of the more holy nature. Meaning that there's more holes in crochet. Not that they are spiritually better. And so she's already sent me pictures, so she got right on that. So that'll be nice when she comes home next month to have a little bit of a new stack. And I do love that Dishy yarn. Let's talk about books. What have you guys been reading? Over in the Facebook group, I sometimes ask this question and get a lot of really good book recommendations that I put on my Goodreads list. So definitely pop on over there. Last podcast, I'm pretty sure that I was talking about that I was listening to the book Commonwealth by Ann Patchett. And I had mixed feelings about it. I wasn't really sure if it was ever going anywhere. And I was just about to abandon it, interestingly, when I got the notice that, it was like going to, I was listening to it on the Libby app, so it will just self-return. And it said, this book is going to return in 3 days. Do you want to place a hold for it? Which means that I couldn't renew it, that somebody else was in line for it. And because of that, I just determined that I had to finish it. And I had a very long day in LA with my son, which is actually where my husband and he are today, that gone for 9 hours, so I've got the whole house to myself for 9 hours. And I just listened to that book incessantly that whole day. And I actually finished the book about 30 minutes before it was going to return. And you know what? No regrets. I ended up really enjoying it. It never really does get going. And I asked about it. I asked about abandoning it in the Facebook group, and people were like, yeah, nothing really happens. I listened to it. It was okay. But you know what? I'm going to give it more than just a meh. I really enjoyed it. It's a quiet book. It's a book about character. It's not a book about plot. But it ended up being very enjoyable. So then I'm at a loss for what to do. So I downloaded Open House by Elizabeth Berg. Now, there are some people in my life who love Elizabeth Berg as like one of their favorite writers. My sister-in-law loves her and has been trying to get me to read her for years. Frances loves her over at the Off Kilter Quilt. And although she has told me, because I've tried a few books, and Frances tells me that there is a period of time where her books were a little bit mediocre, that she was better at the beginning of her career, and she had a bit of a drought there. And so maybe that's what I was reading. I don't even know when this book was written. I'm going to guess in the 90s, because there's no cell phones. And there's just a few little clues like that this is, and they're putting in a cassette tape, and I'm picturing a VHS tape in the thing. So it's definitely not current. And I wasn't sure about this one either. It's, I guess I read and listen to so much kind of older stuff that I have a little bit trouble with contemporary fiction sometimes, even though this isn't necessarily contemporary. It feels very contemporary. And the woman's voice that's reading it, I have mixed feelings about. But it's pretty good. It's about a woman whose husband leaves her. And the open house part of it is that she starts taking in, roommates to help her make her mortgage. I thought it would be more about that aspect of it. It doesn't actually seem to be. It's more just like woman with a 10-year-old son coping with the reality of getting divorced and being single in your 40s. And the whole roommate thing seems to be, at least I'm about 2/3 through, so maybe it changes. That just is just one other subplot. So I'm not done with it, but I will give it a half-hearted thumbs up at this point. I finished reading the actual book. It was an ebook called The Art of Arranging Flowers by Lynn Branard. And it's one of those books. It's the book I read before I go to sleep, so it took me forever to get through it. And I didn't, again, I was not sure I was loving it until I started reading it during daylight hours once it got going. And I enjoyed it. So it's a woman who owns, she's a florist. She owns her own flower shop in what seems like a very cute little small town. And so when she arranges flowers, it's not a lot about this part of it, but she definitely has ideas about, like when she arranges a flower arrangement for someone, she puts the type of flowers that bring like this means love, or this brings healing, this sort of thing brings peace, and so people love her arrangements, and they always seem to be exactly what they need, because she actually is putting some thought into the types of flowers that she's putting into the arrangements. So that's kind of a side aspect. But it's a lot about what happens with the people who come into her shop, and some turns that her life takes. And this little boy who lost his mom, she hires him to do some chores around the shop, and they develop a very sweet relationship. And she's probably in her 40s, never been married, and people keep trying to fix her up. And it's just kind of a light read, but I definitely enjoyed it. And that's about all I've been reading. Although I do want to share with you, I've shared a million times about Libby, which is which is an app by Overdrive, which allows you to download audiobooks from your library. Although apparently there are quite a lot of other different libraries use different apps, I've learned. But that's the one for our libraries around here. But I started getting ads for something called Chirp, CHIRP, which is another audiobook. It's kind of like a competitor to Audible. So I downloaded that app, and they have sales on audiobooks all the time. And so I decided I would try one. So I have not listened to it yet, so I'm not endorsing the book, but it's called The Death of a Perfect Wife by M.C. Beaton, which I feel like I've heard of that author before. It's a mystery, obviously. And I got it for $1.99. So I just kind of quickly look through the sales that, it's kind of like getting the $1.99 ebook from Amazon. So I'm not sure about the quality of narration here, but if anyone has any experience with Chirp, I would love to hear it. But if I can't find what I want from Libby, this might be the way to get a few more audiobooks. All right, so as I was doing all that hand piecing of the border on my Hand Pieced Quilt Along quilt, I got obsessed with Howard's End, watching Howard's End. So I was on the PBS app. Again, I'm a PBS Passport member, which just means that I give them a donation. I think all you have to do is donate to them, and you are a Passport member, which has so many benefits. Like, usually, not always, but usually they drop, like when Poldark would come out, they would drop the whole season. So they're going to parcel that out week after week. It's going to take you 8 weeks to watch all of Poldark. Well, I can watch all of Poldark in a week because all the episodes are there. So that's, I love that they're all there and you don't have to wait for them. So I'm just looking around for something else to watch, and I see that there is Howard's End. That was written by E.M. Forster. If you lived through the 90s, if you remember the Merchant Ivory films, I watched all of those. So I'm pretty sure I've seen Howard's End. I actually had this book that I very aspirationally bought from the the Barnes & Noble bargain bin in my 20s, which was a compilation of different E.M. Forster books. So it had Remains of the Day and Howard's End, and I don't even know what else. But I dragged that book around with me for 25 years. And when I did my last purge earlier in the year, I think that I finally donated that book. And it's funny because, true to form, I went looking for it. I'm like, I should read this. And now I've given it away. So there is a masterpiece miniseries of Howard's End. I remembered nothing of the story. I'm not even positive I've seen it, but I'm pretty sure I saw all those Merchant Ivory films in the 90s. So it's 4 episodes, and it's so beautifully cast. It was so much fun. So if you've got access to the PBS, I totally recommend Howard's End. And I'm telling you that the moment I finished it, I just got back on Netflix and found the movie Howard's End that has a very young Helena Bonham Carter. If like the last thing you've seen her in is the Harry Potter movies, wow, what a difference. She was just such a baby in that film. And, of course, Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins. Should I say Sir Anthony Hopkins? And then Remains of the Day also has Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson again. So I'm going to have to watch that one. But it was very interesting after seeing a 4-episode miniseries and then go straight into the movie. I'm like, I felt like the story was going to feel so much more contracted, but it really didn't. So I enjoyed both of those immensely. And the other thing that my husband and I just started watching is Homeland Season 7. A few years ago, we totally binged seasons 1 through 6. I think maybe 1 through 4 was on Hulu. And then we just paid for it's on Showtime subscription for a month or whatever and watched seasons 5 and 6. But now Hulu has season 7. And my husband said he heard an interview with Claire Danes, and the season 8 is what's coming out. So if we can get through season 7 here, we can watch season 8 as it happens, and then that's going to be the end of it. But man, it's been such a long time since we watched this show that it is so hard to figure out what's going on. So we've actually gone back into season 6 to watch the last episode, and we're still pretty confused. But we went through a period of time where we watched so many shows like that it was so hard to keep them straight. There was The Wire and Jack Ryan and Homeland and Looming Tower. So they all kind of run together. But Claire Danes is such an amazing actress in Homeland. So I'm kind of enjoying getting back to that. Let's finish this off with some homemaking. I gotta say, I sat there with my cup of tea this morning thinking, what am I going to talk about homemaking? Because a few months ago, that's all I wanted to talk about. And now I don't really want to talk about it because I'm not doing a great job at it. I'm keeping our heads above water. Routines really, really help you here. But because I'm basically launching a business right now, I feel like I've got 3 jobs right now. And even though everything I do is I work from home, I'm basically putting in about 10 to 12 hours a day on working things. And it's just really hard to keep up the cleaning. I never really realized how cushy I had it. Like if I could just be done by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then that's enough time for me to wash up the dishes, put away the laundry, and maybe do one of my 15-minute things. I could dust or sweep or mop the floor or something like that. But I'm not. I'm working till I got to start making dinner. And then after dinner and a walk, I've been sitting down and doing the Hand Pieced Quilt Along stuff until bedtime. So things have just been a little crazy. And I know it won't be like this forever. And I'm actually enjoying everything I'm doing. It's just kind of a lot and it will settle down. So I'm back to, like, today's Saturday. That's why this podcast is actually, I'm recording on a Saturday. You would normally podcast right after lunch one of the days during the week, and there was just not a day to do that. And that's okay. I'm just going to have to learn that Saturdays are a day where I'm going to have to play catch up a little bit. So, but I'm keeping things above, my head above water during the week, and then just doing a little bit more of my weekly cleaning. And I'm not worrying about really deep cleaning right now. I know things are going to settle down, and then I'll just get down in there and wipe down the fronts of the kitchen cabinets and get back to washing windows, and I'm just not going to stress about it right now. So, it's just got to be willing to change up your routines for whatever, kind of season of life that you're in. One little trick that I like to do when a day like this where I realize I need to clean the house, but I'm just beyond wanting to spend an hour and a half cleaning the house. I still like the whole 15-minute thing. And so I'm going to do my little 15 minutes spread out during the day. So I'm recording now. When I'm done with this, I will probably go have lunch and then maybe dust. And then I'll sit down and I'll edit this podcast for maybe 30 minutes. And then I'll go, sweep or wipe down the bathrooms or whatever. And just, kind of go 45 minutes of something that I want to do, and then 15 minutes of cleaning. And I can just do that all day. And by the end of the day, I normally do this with sewing, where I'll sew for 45, clean for 15, sew for 45. But sewing's not really on the the table today, maybe tonight. But that kind of going back and forth between something you want to do and something you have to do kind of works for me. So, I encourage you to give that a try if you've got a whole big block of something that you don't really want to do. The other thing I've been trying to kind of stay up on, even though I'm working a lot, is staying on top of the nagging items. We talked about that a lot last year. One nagging thing that we finally got off our list is we finally bought a new garage door. We had this garage door that it had many problems. It has had many problems for many years, but it was so loud that it would frighten people who were walking by the house when I would open it. And whenever I went somewhere with a friend, like I go to yoga with my little next door neighbor, and it's like embarrassingly loud. So finally it broke, and it was not a fun thing to spend a large amount of money on. But I gotta say, it's so beautifully quiet now. It wasn't even the garage door opener; it was the garage, and we kind of sprung for the extra to get windows on that top row. When we bought our garage door 20 some years ago, we were on a budget, and so we just went the cheapest way possible. And I'm like, I've always wanted those windows. And my husband was like, yeah, I don't really get that, but if you want it, fine. So I did. And what's been really cool is now when you go into the garage, there's light in the garage. You don't have to turn a light on. And now everybody thinks it was worth the money just because of that, not because it looks better. But anyways, it was fun to get that one knocked out. A couple of the things that I want to knock out in the next coming weeks is all of a sudden I kept going, why is it so dark in the kitchen? I'm turning on the lights. I'm like, why? I don't understand. It's I know it's winter, but we're getting more light. And then I finally realized that 2 of the lights were out. We've got those big canned lights above, and what a huge difference. And 2 of them went out at once. They're probably both like 17 years old. So that's going to require a trip to Home Depot. Oh, maybe I'll pick up some plants too. That could be fun. And the other little nagging thing that I want to tackle is we've got feather pillows as throw pillows on the couch. And I do believe in feather pillows. I learned that from the nester, is to get feather pillows because you can always, they get flat, but you can just pump them back up. Well, I had this issue that you lose feathers, like they poke through. And, one time when I unzipped the outer part of it, I realized there was a rip in the inner pillow, which explained why it always looked like there was like a whole chicken massacre by the end of the day in our family room. There were feathers everywhere. Well, now they just, there's just a few every day, but it adds up, and one of them is getting pretty flat. So I actually have a couple of a size that I don't need. So I think I'm going to rip those things open and kind of put more feathers in, which I'm kind of dreading this thing because I know it is going to be a mess. But I really want those little plump pillows on my couch again. So those are the 2 things I'm going to tackle before my next podcast. I'm hoping to say I have a well-lit kitchen and very plump pillows. So let's talk a little bit about reviews. Thank you so much for people who left reviews. Actually, Happy Stitches left a review. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thank you for people who leave comments. Sometimes I don't realize people are leaving comments because the comments come to me as an email, and so I don't necessarily process whether it's a comment or an email because I just answer them all personally. So if you look on the comments and think Kristen never answers these, you just get a private email back. So thank you to, I wrote Marsh. I think it must be Marcia, Anita, and Ellen for leaving comments. I really appreciate that. I love, kind of keeping the conversation going here, which is what we're doing in the Facebook group. And I'm loving people besides me are starting to post in the Facebook group and sharing things that they're making and, just sharing, things that they're doing. I'm going to start, we have only had 1 post, and I'll try to get it going on a more regular basis. We're talking about healthy habits. I'm trying to lose weight, and I think a lot of sedentary quilters are. So we're sharing what we're doing healthy habit-wise. I've stopped doing Weight Watchers because I wasn't really being true to it, and that can get expensive. So I've downloaded the app I Track Bites, which is kind of a Weight Watchers knockoff, and it's free. There is a paid version, which is like $36 forever, that I might switch to if I prove to myself I will track. But so anyways, it's kind of the Weight Watchers mentality of points. They call them bites. So that's just so we're kind of talking about that. So definitely join us over there. Well, that's about it for this week. You can find me online at my blog, Simple Handmade Everyday, or on Instagram at Kristen Esser. And please join the Facebook group, the Simple Handmade Everyday Facebook group, so that we can keep the conversation going. You have a great week.